everybody, I am Sarah. Welcome back to Overkill Reviews, Banger's heavy metal review show. Obviously, things right now have been pretty strange and unprecedented for everyone. We are all dealing with the devastating impact of COVID-19, which has confined everyone, with the exception of essential workers, to their homes. If you are an essential worker, I just want to say right now, thank you so much for your services. Now, we know that everybody wants more reviews. Before I jump in to the review, I was asked to do a personal update just because things in March were pretty hellish, for lack of a better term. My band Smolder, we had a new EP come out. It's called Dream Quest Ends. And on March 10th, we left for our tour of Greece, and we were going to be playing up the Hammers Festival, Horns Up Festival, and a show in Thessaloniki as well. And on March 11th, was when we arrived, and then on March 12th, Trump's travel ban was implemented, and that kind of just threw everything into absolute chaos. And we were luckily able to turn a couple of our bandmates who had flown in from the United States and get them home safely, which was great, but that left myself, our guitarist, and our bassist stranded in Greece alongside numerous festival goers. It was a pretty scary situation. So Greece was quickly implementing really hardcore lockdown procedures. So it took us about 4 days to actually get everything sorted and get flights. But, you know, we also had a lot of help from friends and family and fans from all over the world. We just wanted to start out by saying thank you, because amidst all the chaos, there was people bending over backwards to help us out, and that's what we want to encourage in these uncertain times, for folks to be generous and giving. And for us, the people that Smolder wants to personally thank for getting us out of Greece was Panos and Manolis from Up the Hammers Festival. Those dudes have been really hit by this, and we want to extend our thanks and gratitude. There's Chris Tiger from Horns Up Festival. He helped coordinate a ton of merch sales for us, which really helped because when we landed, we had tons of boxes of merch that we also needed to deal with. We wanted to thank Philippe and the guys in Scald. If you remember the episode, the Russian heavy metal episode, I love this band, and they were also stranded like us, and they invited us to their jam. So seeing Night Sky was incredible. Wanted to thank the guy who runs the New Wave of Traditional Heavy Metal YouTube channel, because he hung out with us and made us feel a lot better. Wanted to thank Paris and Noah from the epic doom band Concilium. Wanted to thank the Underground Cafe for allowing us and Scald to sell our merch there. Greg from Eat Metal Records for buying a bunch of our merch. Everyone at No Remorse Records for doing the exact same. And then finally, we also wanted to give a huge shout out to our friends in Atlantean Codex, because they shared our stuff online and that helped us sell a bunch more merch. Same thing with our buddies in Visigoth, who are an awesome traditional heavy metal band, and we really love them. And finally, of course, we wanted to thank our fans from around the world. And we had a couple fans in particular we wanted to say thank you to, and our number one fan, Andreas, is the first one because he coordinated a ton of merch sales for us. And aside from him, we also wanted to thank Steve because he sent us a whole bunch, like multiple donations to help us pay for our emergency flights, which don't even want to talk about how expensive that shit was. And then, of course, also our German fan, Dirk Limburg, who did the same. And honestly, there's way too many people to thank, and it was really humbling to receive so much help. So thank you. Now I'm done with that because I don't want to talk about the situation anymore because it really sucked. So we're going to talk about something that doesn't suck and something that rules. That's going to be the subject of my first pandemic edition of Overkill Reviews. And it is the third studio album by an upstart Canadian traditional heavy metal band who hails from Western Canada and specifically from Vancouver. And here they are. All right, It's the brand new album from Vancouver-based traditional heavy metal band Spell. The record is called Opulent Decay, and it's out now via Bad Omen Records. Are you ready for some obscure Canadian trad metal history? Well, you're gonna get it, so enjoy. Spell started out in 2007 and went by their initial name, Striker. No, I'm not talking about the Edmonton band Striker, who is still active to this day. They were Striker with a Y. In 2013, they decided to turn into Spell, and in 2014, they released their debut, and it is called The Full Moon Sessions. I really recommend this album and this release. I've been listening to this band a long time. And this one really crystallized their understated 70s metal-oriented approach and sounded deeply, deeply inspired by Canadian trad metalers Cauldron. Now, if you're not familiar with Cauldron, you should get on that. Spell have this unusual, almost spoken word, rather flat style of singing that isn't extremely common. Spell furthered that lineage on the follow-up to this release, which is called For None and All. This album was definitely a step up from the previous, and intriguingly was recorded entirely live on analog tape, which is actually pretty sick. A lot of bands obviously do a lot of overdubbing and all that other kind of stuff, and it's cool that this band specifically wanted like that raw, natural vibe. And this album features my absolute favorite Spell track, which is called The Veil, and I can't recommend it enough because it's got these really interestingly layered vocals and excellent soloing and wails. Notably, it also features artwork from Adam Burke, who you should kind of already be familiar with. I will show you a couple other covers that he's done, including, my favorite album of that year, which was the new Pagan Altar. Oh, love The Room of Shadows. And, of course, one of my favorite albums of the 2010s, Eternal Champion. On their new album, does Spell do anything differently? Or are they just the same? What are we supposed to expect here? Okay, we're going to start off, of course, with the best parts. I'm going to kick things off with an observation. Spell is doing one thing rather differently on Opulent Decay, which is having far more vocal trade-off between the bassist / lead vocalist, Cam Mesmer, and their drummer / second vocalist, Lester. Now, it's partially due to that change that Opulent Decay is their most streamlined and engaging release to date. Lester does lead vocals on the tracks Imprisoned by Shadows, and he also does the verses on the song Deceiver, while Cam is singing the choruses. And not only that, but, Cam has really worked on becoming a much better vocalist and a much more diverse vocalist, and the evidence of that is all throughout this album. As a result, the music has benefited greatly, and it's also allowing Spell to kind of step out from Cauldron's shadow, because they constantly are compared to that band, and now I think that they're really diving into and developing their own sound. Now, for the genre. I would definitely describe this one as mustache rock. All these dudes obviously have mustaches, and they obviously also like music made by dudes who have mustaches. And now I want to talk about some very specific highlights on the new record. For me, the solo by Graham McGee in Opulent Decay is awesome. It's super propulsive, and it really grants a sense of serious urgency to this very dark and gothic song. And then the intro to Sybil Vane has this really stark and very different vibe compared to the track before it, and it's rather oddly jaunty and positive, and it really gives way to this shuffling progression. And it's really interesting how the chorus ends up working its way in there. Later on in the album, you've got this really strange drum and guitar interplay with the bass just kind of like lazily wandering throughout. And I think that that's where one of Spell's strengths is the fact that a lot of the time you're not expecting the direction that they're going into, but it still works all together. Finally, I have to talk about the song Dawn Wanderer, because for me it is the best song on the album, because it's really dark and beautiful, and it best encapsulates the oddly intoxicating vibe of this album. The vocals are reverb heavy, and when they are partnered with the rather dry instrumentation and super interesting progressions, it gives the whole track and really the whole album this really sad gothic vibe. That vibe continues on into the song Ataraxia, and that one is the standout for being the strangest song on the album, because it is a heavily layered a cappella song. And I talked to vocalist Cam Mesmer specifically about this track because I was curious about how he did it. And it turns out he did 94 layers of harmonized cruising. So it's 94 layers of his own voice, and that's it. And it does end up feeling like a church hymn. There's some sort of, oh, this is my cat. Sorry, one sec. Wow! So altogether, Ataraxia feels like a church hymn. It's got this kind of orthodox chanting that gives the album, well, the song itself and the album, considerable weight. All told, many of the tempo and mood shifts on Opulent Decay are really unexpected and jilting in this really unusual way. That's not to say that they feel forced or that they don't work. It's just that they feel different, and that is what makes Spell stand on their own and worthy of a review. And, oh, this is Odin. He is back again for a second time. I'm going to pick him up. Finally, I do have to talk about the fact that this album feels short. It's 49 minutes long, but it does not feel that way. Okay, now we're going to talk about the worst parts as we do in a review. To put it this way, I think the strongest songs on this album are the ones that feature the dueling and harmonizing vocals. So I'm just going to say, Spell, put even more of that stuff in because it really results in your best tracks. Other than that, I don't really have that many complaints. This album has been growing on me like an insidious weed. I usually don't particularly like the rather odd kind of spoken style of singing, but when you couple it with the synth and the instrumentation and the unusual and interesting changes, it all works together really well. And I think that that's the best part, is that Spell is becoming their own band in this really skillful way. The result is Opulent Decay is understated and hypnotic and odd, and it carries on a specific tradition of Canadian metal. But what does that mean for the rating? Let's find out. All right, Opulent Decay gets 4 skulls out of 5 here on Overkill Reviews. Now for the shoutouts. Shoutouts, because music is everything in my life. First band I'm going to talk about is Ontario's own Freeways, who released their debut full-length, True Bearings, via Temple of Mystery Records on April 2nd. If you are into Budgie and Thin Lizzy, then you're going to love this. It is also very smooth 70s rock / metal vibes, so I highly recommend this one. I do think it's going to be on my list of top albums of 2020. And the second album, another one of those records that's going to hit my best of 2020 list. This one is by Swedish proto-metalers Hallis. They released their third studio album, Conundrum, on February 14th via Napalm Records internationally. If you don't know this band, well, you definitely should. It sounds like if Captain Beyond and Yes and Hawkwind made this like sexy weird little baby. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Stay home, stay safe, and wash your goddamn hands. Cheers. But